What's up, sports fans, and welcome to the Sports Opinions Podcast. I am your host, as always, Alex Cuesta, and with me today is a gentleman that was gracious enough to have me on his show something like 2 weeks ago. It was a good time, it was fun, and I was like, hey, let's run it back, let's have you on mine. So we switched positions. I'm now host, he's now guest, and he is Frank Gordon. He's the head, his words, big mouth at the Ultimate Sports Network. Frank, what's up, brother?
Interested in doing this where I get to talk instead of listen. And I like to talk, so you'll find that out.
Yeah, it's fun. So for those that don't know, explain a little bit about the Ultimate Sports Network, what you guys are trying to do, what you guys are trying to accomplish, what sets you guys out from everyone else in this industry that's trying to make it.
Well, I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to take over the world, and that's
Pinky
as
and the
simple as I
brain.
can make it. Take over the world. But the idea is we have a lot of people like ourselves that do this.
Yep.
And a lot of people like ourselves that are doing it part-time. They're squeezing in the show here, squeezing in the show there. I can get a guest, but the guest is only available from 2 to 4 on Tuesday, but I can only do the show from 3 to 9 on Wednesday. And it's kind of hard to mesh this all together. Yeah, exactly. That's the way
me.
it works. We all have real lives, so
Yeah.
we have to do what we have to do. Well, what I'm trying to do is figure out a way to get this planet of people that do this a way that they can do as a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have full-time listeners, why don't we have full-time broadcasters? So the concept is to get this station, my station, a basketball station for a particular team, a particular passion, to get people to be able to do it full-time. Now we've got to find the funding for that, but I think I found creative ways to do that as well. But invest in yourself, invest in each other, and it should work out. But the concept is, hey, there's 24/7 sports talk around the world. Let's get more of it, because that's what we do. And noticing what we're able to do now, and those of you watching that are doing Zoom meetings all the time instead of going to the office, you realize how simple this is.
Oh, yeah.
And how effective it is. So the idea is to get people going and going and going and going, and to continue this kind of passionate sports talk.
Now, what we do was kind of, you've been doing it for a little bit. I've been doing it for close to 3 years. Even 3 years ago when I started, this was still much more of a niche thing. But we've been living in a pandemic now. So everyone and their mother has a podcast about something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good transition into sports and into our first topic right there is we've been dealing with this pandemic in every which way. It's definitely changed the way that we do some sports talk, because for a little while there were no X's and O's. So it was just kind of like looking at creative ways to create shows as we start to get this vaccine rolled out, as we hopefully start to eradicate coronavirus, COVID-19, and hopefully we don't get another virus, which I saw CoV-2 SARS might be in South Carolina now, we'll find out how that goes. Apparently the vaccine should work for that too, so don't freak out yet. But as we start to get back to what we're going to call normal, Frank, is there ever going to be a normal again in sports? What should we expect coming into the future with sports?
Well, let me jump back a bit so it kind of makes some sense.
Yep.
When I started doing this a few years back, I had a mentor. I'm from Mansfield, Ohio. A mentor in Ohio that said, and I was doing this as purely sports talk radio, audio, and it was the same basic concept, but we're talk over the phones and record it on a phone call, and then turn it into a podcast.
Yep.
Yeah, and he said, so what's going to happen when it becomes video? And I said, well, when it becomes video, I'll be dead. Because we're looking at 2065 when that happens. I mean, technology isn't going to make it to where you and I can talk on video. I mean, there was Skype, but how many times you do a Skype call that you're looking at a screen that you can't see? You couldn't broadcast that.
Skype isn't,
and you couldn't record it, right? And you couldn't record it. You couldn't parlay it into something else. You definitely couldn't put it out there where people could see it.
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 years later, it's like, hey, this is video. We can do this. Yeah. This is as simple as picking up the phone. This is the new Alexander Graham Bell. This isn't all that hard.
We're living in Star Trek.
Done. Right. Exactly. So you understand that things change. And now this is as simple as doing this. Who knows what the new normal is going to be, because we may all be inside for the rest of our lives. Who knows? We may be able to get outside next week. I have no idea what's going to happen, but I do know that we as human beings are adaptable. We may not want to be, we may seem to be as intractable as we can be as individuals and in the moment, but we all change. Because if we didn't change, we'd all be sitting in diapers and our mothers be taking care of us. We all grow and evolve,
Yeah.
even though we don't want to. The person you were at 18 is not the person you were at 24. Not possible. You got a driver's license and go drink beer. But, there are things that you learn to do. And now, at 34, if you still drink as much beer at 34 as you did at 24, well, you might have a problem. But yeah, exactly. But it's going to change. Now, what is the landscape going to be? It's weird. First of all, we've noticed that we can have a sporting event without people there. I don't think it's as good. I don't think it's as good for the participants, but we, the fans, can still be engaged. If I've noticed anything over the last year, the passion of a sports fan continues.
Yep.
You don't have the people, they're kneeling, I'm not going to do this. They're not kneeling. People have forgot about that because they went, we don't have a game. I'll use a perfect example in the Big Ten. And this may jump back into something. Actually, this is going to go into the next thing, but I'll kind of get to that.
That's fine.
In the Big Ten, we're not having a season. We're not having a football season. Boom, done, over with. End of story. And I said, well, that was a good decision. They made a definitive decision. No matter if you support the commissioner or whatever, they made a definitive decision. Then people whined and cried and actually picketed stadiums where there was nobody there, which I thought was hilarious. We're going to go down to the stadium and we're going to let them know what we think. There's nobody there. Why didn't you go to the AD's office on a Tuesday instead of the stadium on a Saturday when there's nobody there? But it worked. And we kowtowed them into saying, okay, we're going to have a season. So
how much effect did Justin Fields have on that? Because Justin Fields and, college football has become as much of a star-driven, I guess you can call it a league, a star-driven league as any other one there. And you had Trevor Lawrence, you had, Justin Fields. Those are the two guys leading the charge and arguably the two best players in college football that were saying, no. And we discussed this when I talked on your show. This is their job interviews. This is the difference between making $1 million a year and $10 million a year.
Right.
So how much did that have a factor in the Big Ten per se?
If you ask old cynical guy, none. If you ask someone with his eyes open and seeing what's going on in front of you now, a huge difference.
Yep.
Old cynical guy is going to be, they're kids and they wanted what they wanted, but the powers that be will make the proper decision.
The kind of shut up and dribble type of thing.
Right. If the powers that be say, if their vision lines up with the young kid's vision, that's all fine and good. If you want to take credit for it, that's all fine and good. But with my eyes open, it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
And the parents as well. And I thought the parents were wrong. I still think the parents were wrong. But I understand where they're coming from. My eyes are open enough to understand what they're, like you said, it's a job interview. Mm-hmm. My kid has a chance to make maybe, minimum, maybe get drafted, maybe not get drafted. But if he has a huge year this year, because who knows what's going to happen with, more eligibility and less eligibility and this and that, who knows what's going to happen? The landscape of college sports is just completely blown out the water.
Zach Wilson is the happiest guy on the planet that BYU was able to put together some sort of
something,
because his name was out there, but he was a dark horse. He was probably a third, fourth round pick. He's now a bona fide first round pick. He will be one of the 3 quarterbacks selected in the top 10. It's bizarre to see his rise. And
what about the Lance kid from North Dakota State?
Yep.
That didn't get a chance to parlay his goods, and maybe it's good that he didn't, because now we're going off of the idea and not off of, and he played 6 bad games. Mm-hmm. So you can look at it either way.
I don't know if North Dakota State plays bad games. That is such a powerhouse. Yeah. But I get what you're saying. What you're saying.
Yeah.
So let's go to this, because we're talking about, kind of the landscape and how we look at it. And it kind of, me and you are kind of talking about things that are sort of permanency in terms of like what's going to stick and what's going to stay. So I want to jump into that. Now that we're kind of establishing that normal may never be normal, that, we're talking, seems like me and you are both in acceptance that some things may change. What do you think is going to stay? Because after games, limiting players' interaction, we saw the other day, I'm a Nets fan, him and Bam Adebayo are good friends. He's a mentor of Bam's. He wanted to trade jerseys after playing 48 minutes of bumping, hitting, breathing on this guy. At the end of the game, they want to interact. Security stops it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Limited player interaction, limited media being directly around. This is the first time I think in the history of like sports that media hasn't gotten a pass. Even during the flu of 1918, media was still around baseball and things like that. And kind of the powers that be having power, having a ton of power to say to these players, these grown men, curfew, sorry, you
Yeah.
can't go in Kyrie Irving's case to your sister's birthday party, even though
Right.
he did. You can't go down to a funeral. You can't, like, crazy things that we would never think
Yeah.
we'd be saying. Kind of what's here to stay? What's kind of going to go back to normal that you see?
Well, it brings to mind, and I don't know why, the scene from Slapshot, where they come out and they're circling around and they start the fight before the officials come out,
Yeah.
and the Hanson brothers like, so they're at the national anthem, and the official comes like, I'm listening to the freaking song. You know, it's the idea of you have to police everything now.
Mm-hmm.
And even the things that don't make any sense, like you said, a football game, you're out there, the guy just spit in your face and you're slobber all over the place. And at the end of the game, but you can't touch him within 6 feet and you can't, switch jerseys.
This is apparently the smartest disease of all time.
Yeah,
Leave them
exactly.
alone while they're
Yeah,
playing. After they're
yeah.
playing, they're free game.
Well, if you're
It's
going
a
at a
courteous
certain,
disease.
if you're going to a certain space, a certain speed, the disease can't catch up. But when you're static, then it can go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a slow moving disease.
But it's also, we're trying to make ourselves look good as far as the leagues are concerned.
Yes.
We're doing what you should be doing at home.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to practice social distancing when it's available. Maybe not when it's appropriate, when it's available. Well, it seems that the new normal, if you want to call it that, will be that we have the sports. And I don't think there's a problem with that. And I think what we found is, I guess the last thing I was thinking was, when we get to the point where we don't all go to games anyway, because of the TV packages and all that stuff, and they're paying extreme rights for the TV packages. So they're not as concerned about the butts in the seats, other than the metric of how many people you can fit in the stands and the look of it.
Yep.
But they're concerned that we still tune in. So if we have competition and not just scrimmages, which is important, if we have competition, we're going to be in good shape. So like the bubble for the NBA playoffs,
yep,
that was competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, football has looked competitive. Baseball was very, very competitive. Hockey was competitive. So I'm more concerned with the individual sports where the people are drawing from the fans. I heard a golfer say, it's weird out here without having the fans. And I would have thought all sports where you wouldn't have been concerned where the fans were, it would have been golf.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's face it, you got quiet, please be quiet, blah, 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 blah. But apparently after you hit a good shot, you want that roar of the crowd.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that, tennis, quiet, please. They're serving, quiet, please. Well, after you hit a shot, you want that adrenaline rush from the fans. Would have knocked me over the feather. NASCAR, it's weird out here without the fans. Like, come on, you can't hear the fans inside that car. There's no way. But I understand what they're saying. They're used to doing things a certain way, but some of it's going to change. Now, will we have no fans forever? I don't think that's sustainable. But limited reduction, Neyland Stadium for Tennessee, can you play a game in there with 15,000 fans when you've got a capacity for 100,000? Maybe we're going to see smaller stadiums. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot that will have to change, but I think the competition is good. So that's going to stay. One thing I think they're noticing is the back-to-backs. They're playing the home and homes, travel. The travel is, and any player will tell you, the travel is a beast.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to get back and forth and get some sleep and doing this and all that. I think that they're going to work out schedules where you don't have to travel as much.
You see, I would actually hate that, because I feel like that's part of the strategy. That's part of good coaching. It's part of good conditioning.
Sure.
That's part of the athlete's durability, which, a durable athlete is as good as a talented athlete sometimes.
Right.
So part of me is like the home at homes are good for now, but I would love to see them respread that back out and make the road trips tough again. And because I feel like that's the beauty of, and that's one of the, this is a little off topic, but one of the reasons why I hate the current itineration of the NBA playoffs. Play a
Right.
game, break. Play a game, 2 days
Right.
break. And it used to be your home games were back to back. You played them every
Right.
night, and then you had a day of travel, and then you played back to back there. The Bulls were as good as they were because it was a war of attrition as much as it was winning games in a 7 game series. So for me, I like the wars of attrition that athletes have to go through because I think it's part of being a professional athlete.
Well, the mental aspect of the 2-3-2 series is phenomenal.
Yep.
You've got the first 2 home games, you have to hold serve
Mm-hmm.
because you've got 3 games there.
Yep.
And that means you have to get one of those games there, or you have the pressure having to hold serve back the last 2 games. If you're the road team, I got to get one because even if we win the 3 at home, we're still down supposedly because now we got to go back to their place and we've proven we haven't won. Sure, that mentality of that is something that people don't understand. And just like you said, if it's a 162 game season, and unless you're one of these guys that is just phenomenal, and you play 95 great games, but you don't play 162 great games or 158 great games or whatever, you're not league MVP.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get the title. You don't get the contract. It's like, well, you showed potential there, Buster, but you didn't do what the league requires of you. So, and I'm of the mind that there is an asterisk over the last NBA season, just because. And I know that we all did the same thing, but just because. This season, not as many games. When you aren't able to play the full season, it doesn't seem right. So that's something that you have to play the season. And if you're the guy that can't play the whole season, you can't be considered for league, accolades.
Yeah.
So like you said, and you got to coach, you got to manage, you have to strategize, you have to do a lot of things. And you're right, that's going to be different. But again, we have to be fluid. There's no way around it. We can't just say, well, back in my day in 1827, this is the way we did it. Well, it's not 1827 anymore, so you got to go.
Yeah, definitely. So I just kind of want a concise answer on this because
Good luck.
we're going, we are going on, but I don't think people, as much as they're going to like to see us ramble, I think they do expect not a 3 hour show, which me and you can go 3. But
I'll try.
with the with the vaccine rolling out, everyone's going to be encouraged. We're already being encouraged as a general population to take it. There's already those that are saying, no, I'm not going to take it yet, or I'm not going to take it, period. In the league, there's definitely going to be a push to get 100% vaccination from the staff to the ownership down to the players. What's going to happen to players like a Michael Porter Jr., who I don't think is going to take this vaccine? He's already been out on record saying, he doesn't believe COVID is as big as the media has made it seem to be. And I don't think he's alone because there's always small pockets. I don't think he's alone. He just might have been the bravest one to say it.
Right.
So what happens when these small pockets start to come out when they refuse to take the vaccine? What do you think is going to happen to them around the leagues?
What you're going to see, now this may not, and I'll try and be as concise as possible. This may not be what's happening under these current contracts, but I guarantee you the next CBA is going to be, we control these things.
Mm-hmm.
If you want the money, you have to acquiesce to what we say. And we were talking about draconian a few days ago. This is where the leagues are going to be. This is how it's done. These are the things that we control. You signed a contract. You get the vaccine. You travel here. You don't sit out there. There are things that they're going to say, we have to do this for the betterment of our league. For right now, I mean, you can't make someone do something that they haven't agreed to do.
Yeah.
Now, the question of that is, that's all fine and good. You're right, Michael Porter Jr. You don't have to take the vaccine. We don't have to put you on the court. We don't have to keep you with the population. We can put you on COVID IR. So you have to weigh that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, and that's going to come up, and we'll see if they give in to the pressure because there's going to be immediate pressure. We know ESPN where they're going to lie with this, so there's going to be a bunch of pressure with it. But we're going to move away from some, depressing-ish stuff, I guess, because the pandemic is depressing, to something that should be depressing, but hasn't been depressing the last few years. Cleveland sports. Holy
Oh
crap.
my.
Cleveland sports have actually been fun. I'm going to put you on the spot here
Okay.
because I have my beliefs on this. We'll see. You're wearing the shirt. Playing 6 games, did Ohio State deserve to get into the playoff?
Yes, because it was a fluid season. Because they weren't supposed to play in the first place. The Big Ten. They weren't supposed to play in the first place. Then they changed to say they were going to play. Now, is it fair to Indiana? Probably not. Is it fair to the other teams that played 6 games or 7 games or 8 games, whatever? Probably not. But we stated when we changed from not playing to playing that we're going to be fluid. Now, if they just would have said for all teams that played, now we're going to go off your record and your winning percentage, whatever, and then this is how it's going to work. That would have been the better way to do it. But then say, oh, yeah, well, Ohio State's a special case. They're the best team in the league. We'll let them go in. I don't like the way they handled it, but it's fair because they were the best team in the Big Ten, and it was a fluid season.
You have some smaller teams. You have your Coastal Carolina, who had a legendary year for them. They were undefeated. I forget the second team that was undefeated that wanted to get in, and they jumped them. Now, I'm kind of with you. To me, the Big Ten champion is the Big Ten champion. Every year, that league deserves a spot in. 6 games or not, Ohio State's talent outshines itself. And we're going to be honest, no one's going to keep Justin Fields out of the playoff unless he took himself out. So that was just going to happen. I have more of a problem with Notre Dame getting in, but that's another topic in general. Notre Dame is possibly the worst legacy team over the past 2 decades, but that's another topic.
Sure.
Like I said, with you, I have a problem with the way the committee does things. And they're doing this intentionally. They're not stupid because we talk about it. All sports shows talk about it. They make awful decisions. They piss everybody off. And the sports shows go nuts. And now the playoff is talked about on every single station, at least given a half an hour to an hour. It's genius, but it is wrong. And I feel like this year, like you said, it's fluid. They should have worked with expansion this year. So I'm not against Ohio State getting in. I think there's a few teams in the Big Ten that if they win their schedules, they deserve to get in. But at the same time, I can understand how people were pissed.
Well, here's the thing that I have, and you said something which was contradictory but was perfect. They make stupid decisions for us. They're brilliant decisions for them.
Yep.
Because they keep us talking about it. They keep us going at it. They keep us going, oh my goodness, like you said, any bad publicity is publicity. You know, so they're very bright about that.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also disingenuous to say, okay, these are student athletes. Let's not confuse ourselves about that. There are some student athletes. They're not all student athletes.
Yep.
And that doesn't mean that you can't be a student athlete and do what they do. But how many of them are on campus taking classes this fall?
How many of them are on
campus
campus
were doing
taking
anything?
Classes, period?
Period. Well, that's another story. That's another story for another show. But the idea of do they have anything to gain or lose by being in a bubble or by playing an extra game or two or whatever? This year, as you said, been the perfect time to say, okay, from December 16th or 19th, whatever it was, let's just run it down till January 15th, January 31st, whatever, and just go boom, boom, boom. We don't have to worry about a few things this year, or we didn't have to worry about the travel aspect of it, the travel of the fans. If you're an Ohio State fan, for example, and going back to the day, I had a roommate that was like, I hope we go to the to the Rose Bowl while I'm in college so I can have the experience of going to the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
Well, now you say, if my team makes the semis, am I going to go or not? Because I think they're good enough to make the finals. So why would I go to one when I can only afford to go to one? I have to pick and choose which one I'm going to do.
Yep.
And this year would have been a perfect thing to say, we don't have to worry about the fans. We don't even really have to worry about travel. Let's just go to the bubble. Let's play them all in the same place. someplace with turf, and we'll play 4 games a day, do what we've got to do and go from there. So that would have worked out. But again, that would have given a Coastal Carolina, a BYU, a few other teams, a chance to have been competitive. And let's see them together.
Yep.
Because as you mentioned, and again, here's the problem of trying to be concise, I can't do it. The idea that it's not a college football playoff, it's a Big Ten, really SEC, Big 12, ACC playoff.
Yeah.
You can't even really put the Pac-12 in it.
Not right now.
They've got to have and a Notre Dame playoff. So either have 2 playoffs or 3 or 4 and go back to the old, Division I, Division II, FBS, however you want to do it.
Yep.
Figure out a way to keep them involved, because in the NCAA basketball tournament, guess what? A Butler can get to the Final Four. VCU can get to the Final Four. It can happen. Loyola of Chicago can get to the Final Four.
Mm-hmm.
It can happen because they're allowed in the tournament.
Yep.
You're not allowing these people in the tournament. So you can't prove, if you're from the Sun Belt, we really had a phenomenal year this year and we really belong. You're not going to get selected. And I understand why, but still, you have to give them the opportunity. They may be a generational team. You never know. The UCF team from a couple years ago, there are a lot of those guys playing the NFL. So it's not like they were just getting lucky playing against chumps. Those guys could play.
Yep.
Give them a chance.
I've always said 6 teams, Power 5 champions, plus the best at large. That's it. And then you give that Cinderella a chance and the Power 5 gets their due. But they need to make conference championships worth something, because
Right.
Notre Dame getting in after finally playing in a conference and losing means it's worth nothing. And Georgia or Alabama constantly getting in after losing the SEC championship.
Right.
It really cheapens when they take the conference championship into account. No, they sure don't. They take the name on the helmet into account.
Right. But what we've done by adding the playoff, and I think they knew that at one point, but what they've done is we're still kind of in the middle. Now we still have bowl games that are spread out over the course of a month that I don't know. I'm going to speak for me. Yeah. Who watches?
I don't anymore. I used to love bowl season as a kid. It was so much fun to watch bowl season leading up to the BCS championship. And now it's just a way for schools to get money because they made a bowl. That's it. That's the only reason.
You've got guys opting out of the bowls, which is like, well, I got to go prepare for the draft. The draft is 4 months away, 5 months away. What do you mean preparing for the draft starting now? But they don't want to get hurt. Well,
who wants to play in the Bubba Coos Burrito Bowl? Like, who the hell cares? Unless I'm getting free Bubba Coos the whole time in the game, I don't want to play in the Bubba Coos Burrito. I don't even think that's a bowl, but I might have just made one that they're going to take now.
I'll give 2 things real quick. That of the WCC tournament, the Pac-12 tournament for basketball, the WAC tournament, and the Mountain West tournament, I believe. All 4 within the span of 2 weeks. And I was going back and forth between one venue to the other. I was walking on the strip, and there are 4 guys that are 6'8" to 7'2". You're assuming they're basketball players, just on a hunch, right? And plus, they've got a team logo on their sweatsuits as they're walking around.
Yep. And
I overhear them saying, "Why the F did we come here? We're not going to win.
Yep.
We were 4-22 for the season. Why are we here? They didn't want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
They did not want to be there because their season was over. What good does it do them? And again, as a competitor, I guess you want to compete. They didn't want to be there. So this is where the bowls are now. It used to be, and I'll go to the second point. When I was a kid, my birthday is on New Year's Eve.
Oh,
so
look at that.
I get up. Yeah. Oh, this makes it fun. And my parents like to have fun. So New Year's Eve would come and go, and my parents are AWOL doing whatever they're doing. So my brother and sister are looking after me. It's like, yeah. So the running joke was, we'll do your birthday on the 3rd. You'll be okay. So New Year's Day, my dad would stumble downstairs, and I'm making it sound worse than it is, but it's for effect. And he'd say, "Boy, come here, sit down. We're watching football today." And we would watch the Bluebonnet Bowl, the Outback Bowl, the Freedom Bowl, the everything. And it was football all day long. back when they had 3 channels and they were on all 3 channels.
Yep.
And it was football all day long, leading up to the Cotton Bowl and the Sugar Bowl. We finally got to the Rose Bowl. Then we got to the Orange Bowl. And the only thing that was decided at the end of the day was who won and who lost. And then you could say, well, put the records together, and we got to see everybody play. And at the end of the Orange Bowl, you say, I think Nebraska was the best team all day.
Yep.
That was how you figured it out. You watched them all play in the game that mattered the most to them. The conference champions got to go here. The conference champions got to go there. On occasion, the third-team Big Ten team might make a bowl. And they usually lost because they're playing the conference champion from someplace else.
Mm-hmm.
So that, to me, was bowl day. Now you've gotten to the bowls where you're like, I don't even know who's playing. That again, have to be fluid.
On a random Tuesday.
On a random Tuesday, right? December 18th. It's the Outback Steakhouse Fiesta Bowl. Like, on what day? Really? And you come home from work like, hey, there's a bowl game on. Yeah. They've got to fix it. I think they have to eliminate the bowls if they're going to have the playoff and then make the playoffs work. Yeah.
Toledo UAB. Yeah, I'm really wanting to watch Toledo versus UAB.
Yeah.
So we're going to slide into more Cleveland sports, more usual sources of depression, which this year became a source of elation. The Cleveland Browns went 11-5. The Cleveland Browns played in the playoffs. The Cleveland Browns played really well all year. Baker Mayfield finally coming into his own, realizing he's not the best quarterback in the NFL, but he sure as hell can be a very good quarterback in the NFL and can stay within himself. Jarvis Landry establishing himself as a top 10 wide receiver, period. And that's without Odell Beckham, who, when he was there, was on his best behavior and was kind of like, Jarvis is open, throw it to Jarvis. I'm open, throw it to me. He didn't mind the gadget plays. He looked like he was all about it. And they ran the football and played a hell of a defense. They look like they're having the makings to at least get a good, nice 5-year run. Whether or not there's a championship team there, with Patty Mahomes existing, with certain players existing, it's difficult. Right. But it looks like it could be fun for 5 years, at least 5 years. But as a seasoned Browns fan, are you expecting the Browns to Browns next year?
I didn't expect them to be this year. That cynicism is born from 30 years of
and I'm a Jets fan.
Yeah, and so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
And it's got to be born from you from like a few years of non-existence when they were just like, oh, deuces Browns. Like,
yeah. And well, now what do I do? And I'll tell you, and again, to not be concise, but I'll tell you what happened. And I'm hoping I'm alone in this. I don't know. When the Browns went away, I'm like, anyone watching? I'm going to watch the Steelers.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, who else? I'm definitely not going to go to the dark side and root for the Bengals. I'm definitely not going to root for the Ravens.
That's when you go across the country and you just root for someone in California. Like
it was Edmonton Eskimos time. Is really what it should have been.
Oh, I'm a Montreal Alouettes guy. That's my CFL team.
Yeah. That's what it was. It was getting close to that.
Yeah.
It's like, what do I do for 3 years of my prime football, wing-eating, beer-drinking life? What do I do? Oh, my God. So Saturday, Ohio State games would last like 3 days. The whole party just kept on going. But in answer to your question, they realized something. And when you say Jarvis Landry established, he reestablished himself as a top 10 receiver.
Yeah.
Because that's what he was in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to figure that out. Or they had to figure it out.
Yeah.
One thing that I think that they understood was we've got Nick Chubb, we've got Kareem Hunt, and we've got a pretty decent offensive line. The eye candy over here, Beckham, Landry, Njoku, everybody else, Higgins, that's all fine and good. We can use that when we need it.
Mm-hmm.
But Stefanski said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to play old-style Cleveland Browns football. And if you go back to the Bernie Kosar years, which is going back a ways, and it was Bernie's the star, but in reality, it was those guys on the offensive line. It was Mack and Biner, and every now and then we're going to throw the ball down the field. when we have to, we will, and it'll look like it's really impressive because we're going to get chunk plays, but in reality, it's slam, bam, here we go.
It's a
And
play
that
action.
defense
Setting up the
is the
play
play.
action.
And then you flip it around, the defense is like, we're going to be stout too. So, you know,
It's
and
a
they played
typical
the Chiefs.
AFC North defense. It's what you
Right.
need to be in the AFC North. So here's a fun question for you. Is the angriest but happiest man in the nation Joe Thomas right now? Like, just the best left tackle in football from the moment drafted to the moment retired. And then they wait 3 years. He's on the Titans games, but the Browns decide to finally put it together and do exactly probably what he wanted them to do for so many years. Just get behind him and run the ball.
And I think you have it said exactly the right way. He's happy for them, but it's like, what took you so stinking long to have it figured out?
Wasted over a decade of talent.
Yeah. My favorite Joe Thomas story is NFL draft day. And the Browns select all this fanfare. I want to play football. This isn't a football day. This is a day for other stuff. I'm going to go hang out with my dad, go fishing, because we're not going to be able to do this for the next decade or so.
Yep.
So, yeah, Joe Thomas is one of those guys you go, this is what you should have been doing. But he was a stand-up guy the entire time. He never said anything bad about the team, whatever. It's like, I'm just going to go out and do my job. And I would like to think that some of the players that still exist from his time there got that.
Oh, but I can't say his name for the life of me, but Bitiono, I can't say his name for the life.
Yeah, Bitonio or whatever.
Bitonio was next, and they were the two cogs of that line for the longest time.
Right.
And now he's the widely veteran there, and I guarantee he benefited from seeing the professionalism of Thomas.
Definitely.
So we're going to put a bow on this real quick because I asked you right before, and you kind of avoided. Will the Browns next year? I'm asking you way too early to predict. No draft, no free agency. What is the Browns' record next year?
Without any changes and any additions, other than maybe OBJ coming back.
Yep.
1 game less.
That's how I know you're a seasoned fan.
One more loss.
That's how I know
one
you're
more
a
loss.
seasoned fan. You're not expecting more.
Right. No, look, they're just about there.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they have to face Kansas City.
And they have to get out of their own division. They got to get away from the bar. And whoever the Steelers decide to make the heir apparent to Big Ben, because Big Ben is almost done. So we're going to find out what they're going to do there. And that brings us over to another thing that I guess is kind of bittersweet, kind of like Cleveland. You don't know whether or not this is going to, come up and hang around, or if it's just going to be a fluke every once in a while. But you mentioned you're a fan of boxing. I enjoy boxing too. My dad wasn't an avid boxing fan, but if there was a pay-per-view on, or if there was a good fight on HBO, because many moons ago, the good fights were on HBO. They weren't pay-per-views. You watched HBO. And we would watch. I grew up watching Bernard Hopkins. I grew up watching Lennox Lewis. I grew up watching a lot of these guys that were, the Klitschko's before it all switched. Like a lot of good heavyweights and stuff and good fighters. Boxing's different now. UFC, the money is still in boxing, but the actual fandom is in UFC right now. We see right now, it's kind of becoming, I don't want to say a joke, but it is more of who's boxing throwing up today to make big, and who's boxing going to put up. And two guys that I don't think are intentionally trying to make it a joke. I think they're trying to make it a career. But Logan and Jake Paul went from being YouTube internet sensations to guys that want to fight everybody. And they've shown that they have some ability. Whether or not they're true pros is yet to be seen. But they do show that they have some boxing acumen. They know how to defend. They know how to throw punches. Do you think what Jake and Logan Paul are doing right now is helping or hurting the sport of boxing?
Well, let's take a look at entertainment, and then we can kind of get a better answer to that.
Yep.
For one thing, we have people, ourselves included, who have bypassed the traditional way of becoming what we want to be.
Yeah.
Instead of going to, even though I did go to journalism school, I don't know I got much out of it, but instead of going through the internship, the job, blah, 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 20 years here, then you can branch out and do stuff on your own. we've decided the technology allows us to do what we want to do the way we want to do it.
Yep.
If you would have asked me 3 years ago and you would have said internet sensation and tacked anything after that, I don't went, what? Or YouTube sensation, like, are you kidding me? Yeah. But now that's a way to get around. You can get paid from YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, who knew? It doesn't make sense. Well, I'm not getting paid from YouTube, but it's that concept of, yeah, what do you got to do? But so there's a different way of going about things. As long as they're licensed by the athletic commissions and they're getting the fights, more power to them. They're bringing other people to boxing that wouldn't be involved in boxing. They're getting more eyes involved. As a traditionalist, I think it's insane. But as a business person and as a person that wants more people to see actual boxing, it's great because they're bringing people to the show. Now, as long as people understand that this is not quote unquote traditional boxing, that's cool. And as long as they understand this is exhibition boxing, we're all right. Now that's where the line is drawn. That's where it gets blurry. What is it we're looking at? But as far as bringing eyes to the table, that's great.
So in going with exhibition boxing, there was a lot of hype for Mike Tyson's last, I'm going to call it a quote unquote fight. And was it against Roy Jones? I don't even remember who he fought at this point. Roy Jones Jr. was another big star, but I'm not gonna lie. Did you even watch that? Because I didn't watch it.
No.
Because I was going to watch it. I was actually fairly excited to see what these two old men can do. You don't lose the speed of your hands. You just kind of lose a little bit of power and you lose stamina for the most part. Because I firmly believe Mike Tyson's punch today is almost as strong as it was 20 years ago. You don't lose that. Same thing with Roy Jones. But then I read the rules. And there were so many rules. And the one thing to me that turned me off was there was never going to be determined a winner. That was it. I wasn't going to watch it. I wasn't going to watch one of the other two beat up on the other, but I don't know. You knew neither of them were going at full strength because there was no reason to. The competitive edge was gone. They just brought a lot of money in for whatever the promotion was that did it. Things like that. There's more Tyson events possibly being planned. We've seen him in Holyfield possibly being promoted, but they're all going to be exhibitions. Do you think that's another good way to help promote the sport, or is that kind of looking at it like we're bringing back old stars that I don't know if they're going to do? It will be like NBA sitting there going, hey, Michael, come on, Michael, Hakeem, you could still, guys in the big three, let's bring you all back in and let's not keep score. Let's just watch you guys run around for an hour.
Yeah, I was going to make that comparison of the big three, which I haven't really watched. It's like, hey, Chris Jackson or Mahmoud Ahmad Rufur, Rashard Lewis. Yeah, okay. I remember when you guys could play. And you still look like you have those skills, which will never go away.
Yep.
But you're playing half-court ball, and Charles Oakley just fell down. It's like, I'm not sure about this. Somebody could chuck another drink. We'll be okay. It doesn't look like it's something that we need to have.
Yep.
Now, that's from somebody who saw them play in their prime. If you never saw Mike Tyson in his prime, or you're still living in Mike Tyson's prime, sure, it's a great thing for you. And if you can't recall Roy Jones Jr. being one of the most unbelievably skilled boxers, he did everything wrong, but he did it so well it was right.
Yep.
He was as fast as can be, and he couldn't be hit when he didn't want to be hit. Now, his problem was he fought another 12 fights after that prime and got the crap beat out of him. But the idea of saying, we're going to put these guys, Tyson Holyfield, who doesn't want to see that? I don't. I wanted to see it again the next year after it happened. I don't want to see it 30 years later. And again, it could be something, but it's not. And as you mentioned, if you're going to do it, make it a fight.
And I want to watch these as much as I wanted to watch Pacquiao Floyd, where Floyd waited 5 to 10 years to wait till Pacquiao was out of his prime. And now Pacquiao might fight Garcia. And what does anyone gain watching Pacquiao, a guy out of his prime, a absolutely unbelievable generational boxer, fight one of the rising up guys? What is Ryan Garcia going to gain from beating Manny Pacquiao? Because if he doesn't beat Manny Pacquiao, he needs to leave the sport, because Manny Pacquiao should not be beating any young bucks right now coming up. His hands are quick, his power's there, but you just got to move around and you're going to beat Manny Pacquiao at this point in his life.
Well, now you say that, and you're probably right.
Shouldn't be
But
right.
we said the same thing when he fought Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman was still a contender.
Yeah.
And Pacquiao comes back and wins the fight. We had the show on. We talked about George Foreman the other day.
Mm-hmm.
George Foreman comes back and is fighting for a title 20 years after he lost it.
Bizarre.
And he beats Michael Moore.
Mm-hmm.
There are pockets of these things where it's a possibility. I think Pacquiao could fight another 5 years. I also think he gets seriously hurt tomorrow.
Yep.
I don't know that I'm willing to give up that 5 years for him not getting hurt. But maybe he defies Father Time. It's like saying, Tom Brady, you got to stop playing quarterback. You're too old. And I know it's a whole different story. I get that. But It's like saying, this might work. Now, what does Ryan Garcia gain from this? The fact that he's got nothing to gain. If he beats Pacquiao, he beat an old Pacquiao.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not a legacy-making fight. If you lose the Pacquiao, it's like you lost an old Pacquiao. Back to the bottom of the rung. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't – other than cash and exposure, it doesn't really do anything. So the whole exhibition thing and those kind of things I don't like. But again, I'm more of I won't call myself a purist, but I'm someone who's been around it for long enough that I want to see good, solid fights. And there are people who just want to get exposure, make money.
Yeah. And so that brings me up to my next point, because I enjoy boxing, but I'd be lying if I said that I'm as on the circuit and I know all the up and comers, because there is no interest right now.
Right.
There's very little interest. And I feel like boxing is at its best when we have great heavyweights, and we're getting there. We have some heavyweights that are really, Tyson Fury is a very interesting guy. You have just, Terrence Crawford is here doing very well. Like, even though he's not a heavyweight, but still we have names now again.
Right.
But there's still problems with the sport that even if these names come up, I think might stop it in terms of competing in popularity with UFC. Because I watch every UFC fight now. I watch all of them. Partially because my brother is the one that pays for it all, but I digress. But but I do enjoy it. And I know a lot of the young talent because I watch all the fight nights, because to me, it's a very interesting sport. There's a lot of fluidity and you can really grasp onto these stars. You see them. You still don't see them in boxing. I think ESPN and Top Rank are doing something good there, because if Top Rank fights are on, I might sit there, eat some nachos and watch some fights. But for the most part, there's still problems. How do you see fixing the sport where guys like me and you who enjoy the sport can get back into dedicating it and kind of telling people like, no, you need to watch this fight. Like, I'll pay for this pay-per-view, come over type of thing, where that's not happening right now.
Right. I made a point on one of our boxing shows a year and a half ago, maybe longer than that. I said, okay, boxing is dying. What do you do about it? And my partner said, boxing's not dying. I'm like, boxing's dying. He's like, well, no, boxing's not dying. He's like, okay. And we've been doing a boxing show ever since. And we have traction because we talk about boxing and not a lot of the bull crap.
Yep.
The problem with boxing is there's two, I don't want to call it a problem. The things that you have to understand is the good heavyweights are now playing power forward, outside linebacker, tight end, even playing first base. Why would I go into profession where I'm going to get my face beat in every day when I can run a down and out and have to block one guy, or I can run a seam route and don't have to worry about getting hit anymore?
Yep.
So those guys are gone. So the guys that would have been the guy that would scraped and clawed and made his way to being heavyweight champion of the world, that's not existing anymore. Also, you don't have the feeder system coming from AAU, Golden Gloves, and Olympics. Name the last Olympic gold medalist from the United States that you can think of. You can't. Clarissa Shields, and that was on the female side. I mean, that's in the Olympics in general. That whole thing is gone. And then from the lower weights, you don't get that as well. If you're a minimum weight or something, you become a jockey. You don't go into boxing. It's a hard thing to do. Now, on the UFC side, you see these guys out there running around, throwing their bodies around and all that, and you could turn your back to them, walk to the nearest pub, nearest bar, and go, could you do that? Yeah, go into the gym, punch somebody, kick them in the balls. That's a bar fight. No, it's more than that. I get that. You've got to have a lot of experience and learn the disciplines and all that. But basically, you're taking a guy who thinks he's a tough guy, no matter what. Conor McGregor, I doubt Conor McGregor can shoot a basketball or catch a baseball or run a flight of stairs. I could be wrong about that. I don't think Conor McGregor is an athlete per se. Now, can he do what he's doing out there? Sure. You've got guys now that are doing things that are learned. You don't have many natural athletes in UFC MMA. That's not to knock them. That's just to say that they're natural. They're just guys. And we gravitate towards that.
Yep.
That could be your neighbor. That could be a guy you went to high school with. That could be anybody. They're every man out there, and then they've chosen this, and it's cool. Boxers had to be disciplined and had to learn a craft and still have that movement, that timing, all that. Not to say that you don't have that in UFC, but that's a skill that's got to be a little bit more ingrained in you.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys are playing other sports now. They're playing soccer since they were in third grade. All that's been out of them. So the lighter weights, the smaller guys, are playing another sport. UFC, it's like I played another sport or something else, and now I'm going to do that. So it has changed the guys that become boxers. And UFC can be, I didn't have to start this discipline when I was 12. I picked it up a couple of years ago. Boom, boom, boom. I figured it out. I took some martial arts. I did a little this. I did a little Brazilian street fighting, a little that. And next thing you know, I can fight somebody and get paid for it. And I think people gravitate towards that because they feel more, even the heavyweights aren't these huge gargantuan guys. You look at them and go, is he, what's the heavyweight? This 205? Hell, I'm 205. I can do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one thing that I've said for a long time, and that UFC and even other sports leagues have on this, what the goal is. I'm trying to get to UFC. I'm in Bellator. Right. I'm in, fighting league. But UFC is the ultimate. I can be those champions, but they really don't matter. I want to be a UFC champion. I can go to the CFL, but I need to get to the NFL if I want to be anybody. Right. All these types of things. Boxing, what is the main promotion? Who knows? You want to be the WBC, WBA, IBF, Top Rank. There's so many. And then I guess the goal is to win them all and unify. But there is no stars because there is no promotion to really make them that. And that's my biggest issue with boxing is if IBF, like your traditionals, your WBC and your IBF for me are the two older ones, or WBA too. They're the traditional ones that really have got it going. But I think that we need to figure out as a boxing community and guys like you, I don't know if you guys have discussed this on your show, because I think this is a topic that might be the biggest issue with the sport is there are so many different promotions that their belts all equally matter. And that is a problem to me, that there isn't one thing to point to. Like we all say, we're watching UFC tonight. That's what we're watching. We know that the guys in the UFC are the best fighters around. But on ESPN, I'm watching Top Rank and I'm seeing a guy fighting in Top Rank and now he's a Top Rank champion. And it's okay, so he's Top Rank, but but now he needs to fight IBF. To me, it's just kind of like the belts kind of don't matter. The champions of each promotion don't matter because they're not the best at their craft. They're the champion of Top Rank, but what does that mean? But is he, it's always the question. So I just think that in order for boxing to go forward, they need to figure out one promotion that is the promotion, or somebody needs to make a promotion and set with a huge pocket and say, you guys are my feeders from now on because I have more money than you. And if you guys want to fight in my league, you need to never fight in those promotions again, period. Because that's what Dana White did. If you're under contract to UFC, you can't fight anywhere else. And if you do, you're out, period. And I feel like that needs to happen. Someone in boxing needs to come in and say, you're a top glove fighter, period. You have a contract with me. If you want to go become the WBA champion, be my guest. You're not in my champion. You have no shot at that point. That's my biggest issue with boxing right now.
And that's kind of where we are. And that's the problem. Okay, so Canelo Alvarez is the super middleweight champion. But then there's another guy who was the silver middleweight super middleweight champion. You put two supers back to back? Well, because he is the super middleweight champion, then you have the other guy who's the middleweight champion. But then you have the WBA and the WBC and the IBF
Exactly.
and then USSB, whatever. The problem that we have, and this is why I said boxing was dying. For one, you have weight classes that are sometimes 3 pounds apart when you get to the lower weights.
Yeah.
5 pounds, 7 pounds. You have things that don't make any sense with that. Then you've got the 4, sometimes 5 divisions. You know, when Foreman fought Frazier, it was for the WBA, WBC championship. There were 2 bodies. That was it. Before that, there was just heavyweight champion of the world. That was, you know, you go back to John L. Sullivan. I'm the heavyweight champion of the world. Somebody's got to beat me to beat. Now it doesn't matter. You know, and the problem is that you have these promoters saying, we're not going to match up you versus you. So here's one of the things that people don't know. If you're ranked, saying if you are the WBA champion, you will not be ranked in the WBC or the IBF or the WBO. So you mean to tell me there's a champion here and a champion here, but I can't be ranked in that side? No. Only the non-champions can be ranked. Once you get a belt, you're no longer ranked in the other one. So you can't be the mandatory for somebody else.
Bizarre. Doesn't
work, right? So my reform, I had 2 things of reform that I've espoused for the last couple of years. One, someone somehow, for the good of boxing, has to say consolidate all of the WBA, WBC, IBF, WBO. That's got to be consolidated. There's one champ and there's one rung. There's not super, silver, junior, all that. It's all one. Yep. If you vacate the belt, then someone else becomes a champion. Mm-hmm. That's mandated by the council. It's not, well, or you have a box off or whatever.
Yep.
Number 2, actually it's a 3-way. Get rid of some of these weight classes.
Absolutely.
Between junior middle and super middle and this and that, make it all one. You know, so instead of there being 17 weight classes, you make it about 8. Number 3, the one that I think is the most important, is instead of the weigh-in being the day before the fight, make the weigh-in the day of the fight. Because now we know what these guys actually weigh. There was a Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fight where he came in at 160 at the middleweight limit. On fight day, he was 182.
Yep, it's insane.
It doesn't make any sense.
They just go in calorie pack.
Yeah, and he's like, well, and it's not safe for the fighters.
No, it's not healthy at all.
On either side. If you walk around at 160 and you come in at 160, now you're fighting a guy 182. Well, that's not safe for you. It's not safe for the guy who rehydrates and just stuffs himself to get back to his normal weight. Mm-hmm. So he's got to fast and everything in an athletic event. And then he's going to change all his body around in 24 hours. It's not safe for them. Eliminate that.
Yep.
Right. But what you do is, if the problem that you have is just like we were talking about the bowl games in football. You have all these people that are used to having their fingers in the pie. And now you're saying we're going to eliminate that. Now, and not to be morbid about it, Bob Arum dies off. We're okay. You know, Don King is almost gone. You know, I thought he was, and he came back this week. And not to be mean about that, but it's like, you know, we've got too many people doing stuff. And I don't know if we want to, the autocracy or whatever word I'm trying to use of Dana White, where I control everything, but you put it together where, you know, you've got Roger Goodell, you've got Adam Silver, they have commissioners, and they may be working on the whims of the owners, but still they're the ones that are the final call with, you know, committees and players associations and all that stuff. But you've got, like you said, you've got too much crap going on that it dilutes everything. So I don't know. There was a fight that was on a few weeks ago, and it was for a belt. And I said, I've never heard of this guy.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not the end all be all in boxing. I understand that. But if I haven't at least heard who he is, and I asked a couple of people, you know, I don't know who that guy is. So he's fighting for the title. And he was 4-0. Huh?
5th fight, title fight. You must be somebody's son. I don't care how skilled you are. You haven't earned the right to fight for a title at 5 fights.
Yeah, he looked good. And that's all fine and good. You know, Lomachenko got a belt after his 3rd fight or something like that. Okay, bizarre. There are outliers, sure. Yeah. But it shouldn't happen all the time where you've got a guy that's 13-1 fighting for a belt and go, who, what? And the other thing is the Gary Russell Jr. thing is, now that I've won and I have the belt, I'm going to fight. I might fight once in 2022. Then I probably won't fight again until 2025. You know, there's no schedule. There's no set way of when should
And
you do
that's the
what you're supposed
beauty
to
of
do.
Dana White, and that's the beauty of contracts, and that is kind of the beauty of the autocrat. It's like, no, if you ain't a fighting champion, UFC champions are fighting champions, and
Right.
boxing, you don't have to be a fighting champion. And I feel
Right.
like that's another. I mean, Frank, we can go on and on for days about the problems of boxing, which is unfortunate, which is why the sport is dying.
Right.
But unfortunately for us, the show is also going. Frank, I want to thank you so much for coming on. We battled through technical difficulties. People will see that with the way I cut this thing up, but we battled through technical difficulties. This is day 2 of trying to record this, but we made it. We made it. So again, I want to let everyone know he's Frank Gordon. He's the man over at the Ultimate Sports Network. Definitely go give it a check out. Listen to their shows. Frank, where can people find you? Where can people find the Ultimate Sports Network?
Well, the easiest thing is to go to our website so we can control that. www.ultimatesports, plural, networks, plural.com. That's the easiest thing to do to find where we're at, and we've got all our links and all that through our link tree there. But if you just want to just go check out the videos that we do or the audios that we do, YouTube, again, Ultimate Sports Network, on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, iHeart, all the places where you get the audio, we podcast from there. Twitter, we are at the numeral 1, USN. Instagram is Ultimate Sports Network. Facebook, geez, we've got, at last count, I think I have us at 39 Facebook pages. It's fun to update all that stuff, but it's basically Ultimate, USN America, USN San Diego, USN Dayton, Ohio, that kind of thing. So we try and specify what goes where, but we're all over the place. Just yell Ultimate out the window, someone will find you.
And again, everybody, I'm Alex Cuesta, host of the Sports Opinions Podcast. Find me at @Cuesta30 on Twitter and Instagram. Find Sports Opinions Podcast on Twitter at SportsOpinion30, Instagram, Sports Opinions 30. Search for us on Facebook. Get us again anywhere you can find a podcast. This video will be up as well. And want to thank everyone for listening. Frank, again, thank you for coming on. Everybody, signing off. Have a good one.